Glitches in video games can be downright hilarious. Heck, Ubisoft have been doing them for so long in their products, they deserve their own comedy series. But when they're not funny, they can be frustrating, making you lose progression, blocking you from venturing further, and even forcing you to reboot the entire game in some circumstances. However, there are some glitches out there that are so damaging, so destructive, they can literally destroy the entire system you're playing them on, rendering the world's most expensive paperweight. So, this episode, I take a look at these shattering snafus, these massacring misfires, and these disintegrating defects. As I say, but hello you. I'm Guru Larry, and I welcome you to Fact Hunt. 5 game-breaking glitches that bricked your console. We'll start the ball rolling with the most recent and famous example of bricking games. Anthem. Electronic Arts' 2019 response to Activision getting away with loot boxes and predatory microtransactions with Destiny 2, and EA responding, "Hold my beer." And boy, did they deliver in that department, with a AAA title of the quality we'd expect from the House of Hawkins. An unfinished glitchy mess containing a bunch of ill-thought out and abandoned ideas created by severely stressed and bullied video game developers trying to meet a completely unfair deadline. And if that wasn't terrible enough, when EA weren't forcing their customers to fork out vast sums of money on cosmetic pieces of software within their game, they were inadvertently having them fork out for new hardware as well. 2 months after launch, news reports started to surface of PS4 owners complaining that Anthem was making their systems switch off mid-game, and in some cases unable to turn the machine back on, resulting in wild speculation that it was bricking consoles. The truth is, Anthem didn't exactly brick the console, per se, just crash it while saving to the hard drive, which would ultimately result in the player needing to reboot their PS4 in safe mode and rebuild the hard drive's disk database. However, if they weren't aware the system has a safe mode for such issues, then it would indeed appear as if their PS4 was bricked, resulting in some users with more money than sense, rather than Google the solution, purchase a new console instead. Also, such a scaremongering story that a video game was destroying consoles was just too tempting for scummy gaming websites and clickbaiting bellends on YouTube. Yes, I can see the ironic hypocrisy here. Shut up. So, the poorly researched news spread online like wildfire. Saying that, having to constantly repair the hard drive on your machine just to play a game is still completely unacceptable. But to the developer BioWare's credit, they released a patch within a week of the problem, with Sony themselves even offering refunds to anyone who downloaded the digital version. But the best way gamers discovered how to avoid the hard drive destroying glitch was to simply not buy the blooming thing anymore. See, we can work together as a community sometimes. Oh, hang on. Not buying Anthem caused EA to heavily discount the game, which increased sales so drastically it ended up becoming the 5th biggest selling game of 2019. Way to go, everyone! As surprising as it was that the world was screaming out for a DS port of Age of Empires, in fact they ended up getting 2 of them for it, the original Age of Kings contained such a massive game-breaking bug it would permanently brick, not the DS, but the cartridge itself. The glitch itself is triggered if you happen to enter a name at the start of the game with less than 4 characters, which is quite a bizarre action to provoke a bug, but this would cause the game to corrupt save files, slow the frame rate down to a snail's pace, or just freeze the game entirely. Now, any normal person would just assume rebooting the game would fix all these issues, but in this case, That's the worst thing you could possibly do. Turning the game back on in this state would brick the cartridge entirely, unable to progress further than the copyright screen, with absolutely zero way to fix the situation. Of course, players were up in arms about such a massive bug and flooded the publisher Majesco's forums en masse. And judging by the publisher's posts, they were completely clueless themselves about what was causing the issue, initially assuming it was the players using the save and quit option to end the game. Eventually, Majesco did manage to pinpoint the reason so many broken cartridges were being returned to them. So, what was their remedy to fix this incredibly damaging and costly bug? Recall the game? Re-release the game completely patched? Simply block people from entering names shorter than 4 characters? Nope, all future versions just came with a slip of paper telling people not to do it anymore. Genius! So, the moral of this story is, if your name is Tim, Dan, Sue or Amy, don't buy the DS version of Age of Empires, as you'll just be throwing 40 clams in the bin. Okay, I'll level with you. If you're a AAA publisher and have to put out a press release containing the phrase "unlikely to erase your hard drive" and spin that as a positive feature for your new game, you know you've got an utter dumpster fire on your hands. Such was the case with Ubisoft's PC title Pool of Radiance: Ruins of Myth Drannor, a Baldur's Gate knockoff that didn't exactly set the world on fire when it was released in 2001, but that was probably due to the fact it was quickly rushed out the door despite being over a year behind development. And even though it was officially part of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons franchise, Pool of Radiance met to rather average review scores, with the new Straits Times Chris Chan, no not that one, calling the game a lot of mindless battles and health and spell recuperation exercises. So, you can see why the game sold so poorly. However, this also might be because of one other tiny hiccup. Just after launch, news got out that the game was not only a complete nightmare to install, failing constantly, but even if you did get that far, you'd be treated to a myriad of broken textures, stuttering gameplay, and a game save feature that would corrupt your save files as soon as you closed your game. But the absolute icing on the cake was, if all the previous hindrances got the best of you and you just wanted rid of the thing on your computer, not only would the game uninstall itself, but also all your other games and the entire partition your copy of Windows was installed on, rendering your PC an incredibly expensive paperweight. Despite Ubisoft issuing a press release that the game was unlikely to erase your hard drive, and quickly releasing a patch to rectify the situation, PC gamers didn't want to leave any chances, and hastily moved on to whatever the next big game out was to complain about its frame rates and resolutions. It may have been birthed from gamers' frustration at a lack of anything Mega Man coming from Capcom, but after the utter dumpster fire that was Mighty No. 9 finally dragging its rotten carcass into stores after being delayed for several years, most of them wished it had stayed that way. Originally cancelled for the Wii U before being resurrected at the behest of Kickstarter backers threatening to pull their funding, you could tell that the Wii U port had been put on the back burner by the fact it contained terrible frame rates, far longer load times than any other system, and most shockingly of all, the game contained not one, but 2 game-breaking glitches. Now, you're obviously thinking they've got to be triggered by visiting some incredibly obscure, unreachable locations you need to glitch through that none of the playtesters discovered. Right? No, don't be silly. one way to destroy your Wii U was to simply fire your weapon in the game. That's it. Yep, the basic art of firing projectiles within the game will kill your console. And even if you were aware of this problem and it scared you into trying to beat the game passively, the elementary act of quitting back to the title screen would also brick your machine. Brilliant! How two of the most common things you could possibly do within a video game got through playtesting is anyone's guess. But luckily the Western publisher, Deep Silver, managed to quickly release a patch that avoided any future system owners from decimating their systems. Not that was any solace for anyone who'd already turned their Wii U into a Nintendo-branded cinderblock. But ultimately, all the patching in the world didn't stop Mighty Number 9 becoming Mighty Number 2. I'll get my coat. Thanks to a lack of upgradable firmware and internal storage, one thing retro consoles will always have over their modern counterparts is that they are literally impossible to brick. However, as we've already seen with Age of Empires, that doesn't stop you from completely frying the cartridges they're played on. Case in point, Nintendo and Rare's Diddy's Kong Quest. No, not Diddy Kong's Quest, like I've been calling it for the past 25 years. Diddy's Kong Quest, the sequel to the third greatest selling SNES game of all time, starring the titular Diddy Kong, a chimp who is out to rescue his primate pal Donkey Kong from the maniacal King K. Rool, then demands his own go-karting spin-off and never inviting him. Anyhow, during the first castle stage of the game, Castle Crush, there's a barrel right near the beginning of the level. If you would happen to throw it against a wall as Diddy, manage to catch it just as it breaks, then throw it again, congratulations, you've just completely destroyed your copy of the game. Now, if you're lucky, the game will just crash and delete all your save files. Yes, and I mean lucky, as the worst case scenario is it corrupts the saves so severely the game refuses to ever let you get past the file select menu before endlessly crashing. Developers Rare did somewhat anticipate Diddy's Kong Quest crashing, as very rarely the game will display an irregularity crash prevention screen. However, this particular glitch tends to be so damaging it won't even give an opportunity for the game to respond with it 99% of the time. Essentially, what's happening here is the game assumes you're still carrying the barrel, while the graphics say you're not. So it decides to redraw the barrel using the next available sprite in the code, which happens to be the enemy, Clubber. However, Clubber isn't supposed to appear in this level, and since there isn't enough SRAM to contain the character, the entire game just freaks out by trying to quit out of the level while at the same time saving and ultimately crashing. So, long story short, the game is saving itself crashing, leaving you with a Nintendo-endorsed plastic paperweight. Now, it is theoretically possible to unbrick your copy of the game, but you better have a steady hand with a soldering iron, as it requires removing the battery pack from the motherboard entirely. Amazingly, this bug was never patched out of the later Virtual Console release either. Though thankfully, you can easily fix the bug by simply deleting all your save files from the console's memory, so you can even have some fun trying the glitch out this release. But if you have a friend that owns a Super Nintendo copy of Diddy's Kong Quest, whom you don't particularly want to be friends with anymore, definitely give this one a go. Hello you! Thanks ever so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to be first to see future Fact Hunt episodes. Click on the bell if you already are to make sure you're notified, and be sure to check out my other episodes. And if you want to be super awesome, check out my Patreon. But thanks again for watching, and I'll be seeing you next time. Ta-ra for now!